3.
Hey everybody, it's Chad Taylor, and you're on the Mentor Podcast set. And today is Human Connection 6. Can't believe we're through 6 already, but we're there. And I have with me Ray Cullison and Sherry Cullison. And let's say hello first.
Well, hello.
Hi.
I'm glad you got to have us. Missed my favorite number, though. I might have liked episode 7.
Episode 7?
7's my favorite number.
We'll do it twice in a row for you. So, Ray is kind of special to me, and he probably doesn't even know this, but when you're on the Mentor set, I think when I really started to enjoy time with Ray was on the golf course in Kingman. So we had met in Kingman, Arizona, probably almost a decade ago.
Mhm.
I would say about a decade ago. And at that time, I was going through some trials and tribulations in my life. And I ended up in Kingman somehow. And I took a liking to your style, which was probably because it was somewhat fatherly in a way at that time in my life. And so I appreciate that. I want to tell you that publicly.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I was glad that I could be there.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, you know, as men, we don't know when we're there for somebody and how it affects them long term. So I'm
Right.
glad to see that whatever I was able to help out on a golf course, it worked out really good for you. I'm really proud of you and happy for what you've accomplished.
I appreciate that. The values, the morals, the ethics, those kind of things that you carried with you were important to me at that time in my life. So when you called me a couple weeks ago, we had a brief conversation, and you had mentioned Sherry's new book, and I had no idea. And I thought, yes, you need to come up here and get on the show and let's talk about that. So obviously I had no idea about this book. So Sherry is here with us, and Sherry took you, actually I'm going to let you explain kind of what happened, but for everybody who's watching this to me, to Sherry, to Ray, and everyone else, if there's anything in this story that's helpful, that's the most important piece of this. So I don't want to use the word like a somber story, because I'm sure you've found joy now, but you'd lost a daughter at a young age, and 14?
14.
14. I have a 14-year-old daughter today, so kind of works me up a little bit even talking about that. So I can't even imagine, but it took almost about 20 years of dealing with that, and then you finally wrote a book. And I want to talk about that today, and I want to talk about your story, and I want to talk about what that's looked like, and just hear from you. And we'll kind of let that guide. We'll do a first 20 minutes kind of talking. I kind of want to know a little bit about you and where you're from. Number one, how you and Ray met. I'd kind of like to get a little bit of backstory, and then we'll get into some of the other pieces, and then we'll follow up with like helpful stuff for people moving forward, right? Those little pieces that helped you that people can grab onto or hold on to in faith or anything else. So, fair enough. So, Sherry, tell me the man that I admire. Tell me a little bit about what I don't know.
Well, I was born in Kingman, Arizona,
Okay.
and he was born in L.A., but at a young age, he moved here in like junior high age,
Okay.
middle school age. And so I'm a little bit older than he is, but he had this crush on me all through high school,
Uh-huh.
and he tried to get with me. And
Should have nothing to do with me.
I didn't like him. I just didn't like him.
Arrogant young man.
Yeah, and sometimes things just turn around like that.
Right.
So anyway, he moved back to California, and eventually moved back to Kingman, and then that's when we met up and started dating, and we married in 1979, so we've been married almost 44 years.
Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's not an easy feat. You don't see
Yeah.
a ton of that anymore.
Yeah.
26 years for the wife and I, and it's truly enjoyable.
Yeah.
It's difficult at times. You go through your trials, your tribulations, you know, and you iron it out. And now we're at the age now where we just look at each other when we start to fight, and we just look at each other and say, "You're it."
You're it.
We ain't
That's
starting
it.
over.
We're
So
not
you might as well stop this fight right now. You're it. Just stop it.
Yep.
So you know you're married when you're sitting on separate couches sending TikToks to each other. That's kind of like the new age. My wife doesn't watch mine, but I send her all the information. I was like, what if you knew everything that I knew, right? We're sharing in it. She goes, nope, lost my phone, threw it in the ocean, don't have a phone. I don't have email anymore, it's gone. So I think it's kind of funny. But
Well, it's
yeah,
not
you,
TikTok, it's what do we
you
do
find a
with what?
comfort.
We do Marco Polo.
Marco Polo.
Do Marco Polo.
She's sitting right over there, and
Yeah.
she's Marco Poloing me when I'm watching something. I'm in tune to
Yeah.
what's on, and I don't even know what she's doing. All of a sudden, my phone will go off.
Right, exactly. It's that comfort of being in each other's space.
Yeah.
There's something beautiful about that. So Ray comes back to Kingman, he woos you, and you guys end up together. It's been a long time. And you were, something that I think people should know is, I thought it was the sheriff, but you were actually the constable?
Constable.
You were
That's
the
right.
constable. And you told me a story about the constable at one point, but isn't the constable kind of have all the power in the world when it comes to a community?
This is the way the Arizona state law is written. Anyways, when you see sheriff, it's slash constable in the what is it called? Arizona Revised Statutes.
Yes,
Gotcha.
all right.
Okay, so, but with that, the sheriff would like to think, as an elected official, he is the most powerful man in the county.
Right,
But the constable's the only one that could arrest him.
right. I think that's what you told me
So
once.
if I'm the only guy that could arrest him, then what does that make
Right,
me?
right.
A lot of power.
So,
Yeah.
and the reason that is because other people, unlike as a constable, I just don't work for the government. I
Right.
work for individuals, right?
For the township,
Yeah,
essentially.
so people would come to me to have documents served or, take possession of property or whatever. And so I have no vested interest either way, where a sheriff or somebody else might.
Right, right. Yeah, you're just there to uphold the law. I think my wife's father was a police officer, and that's something he said is, you're here to uphold the law, you're not above the law.
Mhm.
There's a difference, so, okay. And what were you doing at this time, Sherry? He's a constable, and are you teaching, are you home?
Well, I worked in the court system for 45 years, and
Okay.
then I retired.
Got it.
So,
What
and
was
then
your title there?
I was a judicial assistant. So I was the secretary to a judge when I retired.
Superior Court Judge.
Yeah,
Secretary to a Superior Court judge. Got it.
Yeah.
That must have been interesting.
yeah. I worked in the courtroom as well, years before,
Yeah.
which was very interesting at times. But the last 31 years of my career, I worked as his secretary. So,
Got it. Very nice. All right, so we have a constable and we have a judge's secretary, so you know a little bit about law. You may not have passed the bar, but you're pretty close, right?
Well, I don't know about that, but yeah, as constable, you're always constantly learning, and
Yeah.
you find stuff that comes across that didn't know that, and
Yeah.
same thing with her position, as stuff comes across her desk for the judge,
Right.
but
Okay. So very involved in Kingman, and two excellent careers. I'm assuming you guys are you retired now, close to retirement, you still working?
no, both retired. So I
Retired.
didn't start as constable. So we met when I was constable,
Got
but
it.
I actually retired from the City of Kingman Sanitation Department.
Got it.
So I did almost 27 years in the sanitation department for the City of Kingman.
Okay.
And then I was retired for 11 months when I got elected, and I had run for office for state legislator in 2004, and I lost by 45 votes.
Right.
And then I ran again, and I ran like 4 times, but every time I lost by less than 2 percentage points.
Maybe I should run your marketing campaign next time for you. Actually, actually, that reminds me, didn't I print? I think I printed some signs or something for you at some point. You were running for some sort of office while I was down there.
Well, I think I was probably just starting to run for constable then.
Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Because I got elected in 2014, and that's around the time we met.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I remember that.
So,
All right.
um,
So very, very involved with the community all the way through. I do remember that. There's a few people that I remember from Kingman. Like I said, I mentioned Cassie from Healing Hooves made an enormous difference on my family's life. Like, I don't know if she'll ever listen to this, but her and her daughter, they were amazing. I took my family down there. We rode the horses. My daughters still talk about it today. I've read some new data that suggests that there's a lot more to that healing hooves, healing horses, healing people than we even think.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah, so I think that's going to become something even more. So Kingman left a bit of an impression on me, which is why you're here today. And I want to talk about this a little bit. I want you to talk about this a little bit. So you had a 14-year-old daughter, and just tell me what happened, and let's talk about this a little bit. And remember, this is really for you, and for everybody else, that could glean something powerful from this that can help them through somewhat of a traumatic incident.
Okay. So after we got married, we had a son, and then a daughter. A couple of years later, and about 3.5 years later, we had our third child, daughter, youngest,
Right.
Sarah. And, we're just the usual family, things aren't perfect, but,
Right.
we muddle through. And so it got to a point, I think our son was 19, our daughter was 17, and Sarah was 14. And Ray and I went somewhere one night, and we came home.
Mm-hmm.
And we found Sarah had taken her own life, and that was in 1999. So immediately I felt like my world just spun out of control.
Right.
I just felt like I felt this just such a darkness overcome us, and me. And it was just almost immediately. I mean, it was a traumatic experience, first of all, losing a child, and then secondly, the method that she did it, and then thirdly, the fact that we found her.
Right.
And we found her together. That's actually, we consider that a blessing that we were together,
Right.
that not one of our other kids came home and such, but...
And I'm just going to interrupt just for a second. Keep your thought. And that's a blessing because we got a phone call from our oldest daughter saying she had tried to get a hold of Sarah and wasn't able to get a hold of her.
Right.
And she was getting ready to leave work, and we had actually gone down to watch a movie out of town, and we came back. We didn't go to the movie, and we came home, or came back into town, and she called. I said, well, we're in town. We'll run home right now. And so our oldest daughter was almost on her way to go find something she didn't need to see.
Got it.
Right.
Hindsight.
So Ray told her, he says, just wait, we're almost home. So
Okay.
anyway, so as you can imagine, that just completely devastated us.
1999.
Right. And it was something that I believe that just smacked the face of our community of Kingman.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is it
Small
was
town.
such a shock.
Mm-hmm.
Some people attempt suicide or die by suicide, that they've dealt with depression and despair for many years.
Right.
And some don't. Some don't display any sort of emotion to that effect. So
And was this one of those situations where there was no signs whatsoever?
No sign.
correct, no sign whatsoever.
Okay.
Sarah was always the girl with a beautiful smile, very helpful to other kids,
Right.
other people, the happy-go-lucky. I called her my little leech. And what I mean by that is, when I came home from work, she was the first one come running for a hug.
Right.
And there was a time I know that, I got up from the couch to go cook dinner, and she hooked onto my ankle, and I drug her all the way into the kitchen, and I couldn't get rid of her. It became a fun thing, but I called her
Right.
my little leech because she was just my little hugger,
Yeah.
So, anyway, our community and the people around us, our family, our friends, hundreds of people, it was amazing. The support
rallied around you.
yeah, they rallied around. The support and encouragement was just amazing. Just different things that people did for
Right.
us, and so that helped us carry us through.
So this happens, it's obviously life-changing. No parent would ever want to think of that, right? I said, I have a 14-year-old, so even hearing about it, you think, and you're telling a story, and I watch my wife and my daughter do the same sort of things, right? So you, at this point, are in a career at the court, right? So you spend, talk to me about the first couple years, then the next couple years, the next couple years. When did things start to change for you? When did you start to become, or I don't even know what to say, actually.
Just a recovery sort
Yeah.
of stage. Well, I'll tell you that I didn't take off work for too very long, just a couple of weeks. And I had a wonderful boss who was very gracious. And he says, you just take the time you need. If you need to leave early, if you just need to take a break and come back, whatever you need to do. So he was wonderful about that.
The city of Kingman was the same for me,
Yeah.
Right.
you know.
So I know that when I worked at the office, I suffered a lot from anxiety. And that's just one of those depths of grief that you just have to swim through. You know?
Yeah, I think you make a good point to that. When you're working, when something like that, excuse me, when something like that happens, I teach the youth. The saying goes, "Idle hands are the devil's playground," right? And I think that has a lot to do with your mind. And if you can stay busy with good people, it can be helpful. Because if you're sitting alone in your own thoughts, it becomes more challenging, at least in my experience with the recovery stuff.
No, you're right. I had a friend that you know, we talk about, we went golfing, right? So I had a friend after Sarah died, he knew enough to keep me busy, and he golfed. So it was like every day we get off work, he was come by, let's go golfing, Ray. Let's go golfing, Ray.
Good
So
friends.
it kept my mind moving elsewhere.
Engaged.
But at the beginning of all this, a couple of things I want to interject was, God gave me wisdom from the very beginning, because the very next day we had a meeting with our other two kids, and Sherry and I, and we were in the backyard of our mom and dad's house in a trailer, just us. And I told them, I says, this is either going to make us or break us as a family,
Right.
you know. And I said to him, I says, there's going to be times where we're not going to be who we are because of depression or whatever. And I says, at that time, if I lash out at you, don't ignore me, but let go in one ear and out the other, because I'm probably going to come back and say, you know, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that.
Right.
And the same with the kids. I says, you're going to come in one day and I'm going to go, what's wrong? You know, and that happened. My son came home one day and I could see something was troubling him. And I said, what's wrong? And he goes, you know, and he didn't ask for to talk. I just let it go. I figured if he wanted to talk, he would talk.
Right.
And so that got us through, because not very many people know, when you go through what we went through, 85% of married couple divorce that go through what we
Yeah,
went
because
through.
they blame each other somehow. I've read about that.
And it's very easy because she used my gun,
Yeah,
so Sherry could have said it was your gun.
right.
Our daughter actually wrote a suicide note at her work, behind her
Right.
back.
That afternoon.
And I could have said, why weren't you paying attention? I mean,
Right.
we could have played the blame game
Forever.
all day long, but that wasn't going to fix anything,
That's powerful.
you know? So, with that, and then with the community, we had doctors that try to offer us drugs to get through it. And I told Sherry, I says, I don't want to take a drug, because when I'm off the drug, I still got to go through this.
Right.
You
Very,
know.
very insightful.
So we're just going to do it, and she felt the same way. So we just dealt with it, and then the outpouring of people was our drugs.
Right. The human connection.
The human
Yeah.
You just gave me
Yeah.
chills throughout my entire body. Literally goosebumps everywhere. Wish you could zoom into that. It's the truth.
Yeah.
It's the truth.
There's so many different emotions and levels of grief that you go through, you were talking about over the years. So I would say that the first couple of years were just managing life. You know what I mean? Like, I would get anxiety at work. I felt like I just couldn't breathe. I had to get out, you know. And what I would do, I would just go outside and I walk around the building one time. If that didn't work, I do it again. That didn't work a third time or whatever. So I got to a point where I would just take walks a couple of times a day, and that helped.
Instead of medication.
Yeah.
I think that's powerful because the first thing people do, they hand you some Valium or some, I forget what the other one's called, Xanax. Like they'll hand you pills. Got it. Yeah, they'll hand you pills, and then I've watched a lot of people just become zombies on it, and they don't feel. They don't feel.
And pretty soon, guess what happens? You get addicted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for some of them, they're not supposed to be addictive chemicals. They're psychotropics, essentially. But if they are, then you're rewiring. It's kind of like antidepressants. At some point, you're rewiring thought process with medication, and that changes your neurological behavior, right? So I am inspired, impressed, and amazed that you guys did that without any medications. That's amazing. That means it can be done.
Can.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
All right, so the first couple of years, again, getting through the days, staying busy, keeping your mind as busy as you can, being connected to each other, having the community connected to you. That's the beautiful thing about a smaller town, right? Especially everybody, there's a lot more people know each other. Something I enjoyed about my small towns. What, couple, 2-3 years go by, what happens now? You're getting through the days, and I'm sure there's feelings or thoughts of you still want to give up, right? Like, like, what's the purpose, right? So talk to me more about what happens a few years in.
Okay, so for the next couple of years beyond that, I would say that we get to this point where we focus a lot on the end of life, because when you lose someone close to you, you think more about death.
Right.
You think more about heaven or whatever may come after. So I think we got to a point where we longed for heaven. We longed for a peace, just a settling of our soul, that was just, it just seemed like, some things helped. Music helps. Just taking one step at a time, that was a big thing. I had to focus on, instead of, years ahead, and, just taking one step. If I make it through one day and I'm doing okay, that's great. We all know it's okay to not be okay. So, but the thing is having each other and supporting each other, having friends that check in on us. Hey, how you doing? Is there anything I can do for you? That's a wonderful thing that happened to us, and that we try to do for others, and that I encourage other people to do for others.
So when we started seeking, our own destiny, right? It led to, I told Sherry, I says, we have, we don't know how long we're going to be here. We talked about going to Israel
Right.
several times, and so we decided we're just going to go to Israel. So in the first year after her passing, we went to Israel, and what God did in Israel was totally amazing, to show us where our daughter was, to give us comfort. So there's several things that happened after her death.
Right.
That still, because when somebody passes and you first go through some of what we had to go through, you have all these people there, and then slowly but surely they start going away, right? Because they feel that you're good, We don't rush to somebody necessarily when something happens, because everybody's there.
Right.
But when we know that time when people are starting to fade away, that's when we try to make an entrance and come in to take them to the next level that they have to go through. So when we went to Israel, we were at the Garden Tomb, and there was this
Tomb of Jesus.
Yeah, Tomb of Jesus. There was this a courtyard, and there was this tree with all these butterflies, and they were pure white. They looked like little angels. And Sherry says, she thought they were like little kids, just these little butterflies. Yeah. And there was no other mixed color butterflies. This story's in the book. But Sarah's favorite color was yellow, right? And so there's all these pure white, no mixed colors, and all of a sudden this pure yellow butterfly showed up.
Right.
And it was right then God telling us where our daughter was, you
Yeah.
know. And some people say, well, that's coincidental. That just didn't happen one time. We were in the garden tomb 4 times, and 4 times we got visited by a yellow butterfly. No other mixed color, all these pure white and 1 yellow.
Wow.
It's the most amazing thing, you know. And so God started comforting us when people started not being there. And they're not being there
Yeah.
because they don't want to be there. It's just time, over time, you know, everybody has their own life,
Yeah.
you know, so.
For sure. So I want to get into that a little bit more about. I'm going to take a break for about 1 minute, and then I want to actually dive back into that a little bit about how that worked for you and how that helped. So, Brian, cut it for a second. All right, I always have to bring myself back into the room, back into the conversation. Being able to be present and listen and hear is very important these days. So, thank you for sharing that first, a little bit about what that looked like. And I want to kind of move into how your faith helped you get through the next segment and into the next decade, and where this came to the point where you decided to write a book. But as we go into this, were you, and I don't know all the right words, but were you, is it called in faith, or were you religious before your daughter's passing?
Yes.
Yes,
You
we
were-
were active in church, and in fact, I was the worship leader or the music director,
Okay.
and I was being considered to be hired on staff as the worship leader.
Got it.
So sometimes when you have something big like that you're working towards, the enemy's going to come against you and try to stop it, and that's exactly what he did by, was to try and stop what good was going to come
Right.
of it, but that didn't happen. Anyway,
So,
Got it.
But let me just interject real quick, because we will slide past this if we don't do it now. So, along with our faith, so after Sarah died, we had our church had a card got sent to them from a new, at that time, fairly new evangelist, and his name was Jay Louder. And Jay Louder Harvest Ministries is out of Wichita Falls, Texas. Anyways, he went to all these different churches all over the United States at the time. He was able to go into schools and talk about suicide, drugs, sex, but yet he never mentioned the word Jesus or God, so they allowed him into the schools. But he was allowed to ask, I'm going to be at this church tonight.
Right.
And
Well,
so he would get them to come to the church.
it's separation of church and state, I believe, is the law.
Correct. But,
Correct?
but he was able to get around that, but yet still invite people
Right.
to where he was going to be, and so he was a big hit. So
And was that set up, like, obviously religion and faith have a lot of, there's so much positive to it, however anybody feels about it. I had mentioned to you earlier that I am indifferent at this time. I'm still floating and figuring it out, right? But that separation is so that we can't indoctrinate the children. When I say indoctrinate, I don't know if that's the right word or someone's going to take it offensively, but we can't push something on to the youth that they may or may not want. Is that kind of where that comes from? Like, we can't teach something that someone may disagree with? Is that where the law came from?
it came from people that don't believe in God, but yet here we have churches, or not churches, we have schools today teaching the Quran,
Right.
Islam. We have people teaching homosexuality in schools. You have all
Right.
these other things going on, but you don't want to teach faith.
Got it.
But that's a political argument that
Yeah.
could go on. You
Yeah,
know?
we'll get into that one another
Yeah.
time.
But this guy Jay, right? He sent a card to the church, and our church called him on it. And again, I'm going to show you how God works.
Okay.
Right? Jay started asking questions. How big is your church? How big's your community? all these questions were a big zero for him, because he goes and speaks before literally thousands of people at a time. And he goes, there's no way you should have got that card. Literally zero. You should not have gotten that card. And he says, there must be a reason I'm to be there.
Right.
And so he says, I'm coming. And so
Right.
he came, and we wound up connecting with Jay, and he heard our daughter's story.
Okay.
And he asked if he could use her story. And we said yes. And so since 2000 till still today, he's literally traveled the world, and he's told our daughter's story. And literally thousands upon thousands upon thousands of not only kids but adults have come to know Jesus because of our daughter's story.
Got it.
You know, so when Sarah died, we didn't know the reasons why she died. You know, and Satan meant it for evil, but God made it for good. You know, and so it's, you know,
Right.
our faith, it became really strong after Jay entered our life, and there's more to that story, but this is
Right.
Sherry's time. I just throw my 2 cents in when I can.
That's a beautiful thing. So if your faith is carrying you through, and your daughter's story. So talk to me 10 years in. We're 10 years in. What's going on?
Well, let me just mention it at about 5 years in, I get this driving hunger to help other people, because I can't imagine, you know, other people having to go through the same thing we did. So I got into this campaign of helping other people's active in suicide awareness, prevention awareness. And I tried to get real active in it after 5 years, and I got to a point like I had to step back, and I'm like, no, I'm not quite there yet. I'm not quite ready. So I just gave a little more time. In the meantime, God was working on me to, you know, create this hunger to be writing and to be telling Sarah's story, and just helping other people. So,
Okay. And that leads you up to 10 years, 10 years in, and then 15, because it took almost up to 20 years before you actually put pen to paper?
right, that is right. I've never been a heavy journaler.
Except for the
like
judge?
a lot of people, yeah, exactly.
That's called shorthand.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, you know, so writing my story, yeah, it just took time. I somehow just knew within my own spirit, you know, when it was time,
Right.
when I was ready. I had this idea for a different book, and Ray suggested, you need to tell Sarah's story first. You need to create your foundation. He was right. So, that's what I decided to do first. But I prepared myself. I did a lot of learning about writing in those few years.
Okay.
So in the meantime, our kids grew up, got married, had grandkids. Things were looking pretty good.
Yeah, so you have other kids, and all of you are dealing with this in your own ways. And again, like I think, like you said, it's very insightful up front to know that it's going to be a challenge. And I think that goes in our household. We try and practice that as well, is life is a mirror, and it's not about you. And any of my actions, I promise you, it's something going on inside of me. It's not you. So forgive me as quickly as you can, or remind me that I'm being a problem in the moment for you, right? And go deal with my inner self. So the kids are dealing with this as well. And was there any along that way? Obviously, you guys are a great support system for your children. Who you have the church for you, and a gentleman you've mentioned. Are there any other people along the way that inspired this book for you? Some that you heard from, or watched, or saw, or anybody that kind of started pushing you over the line?
I think the writers' conference really sparked you, because you wrote. Tell them about that. Your first publishing, what you wrote.
Yeah, I went to a writers' conference, and as a part of that, each of the writers at the conference were able to write a story, what they consider an article. And what they did is they compiled, so they help you along writing your story while you're at the conference. And then you edit and so forth, and they put each story all together in a book and published it.
Okay.
So The first thing I told, or the first story I wrote in that book was the story of the butterfly.
Got it.
I was, I was deep in despair. I felt like I was just covered with this darkness, and, that little spark of hope, the butterfly, it just amazingly lifted us up
What
and
was the
encouraged
verse
us.
that you guys had to write on?
The verse was, out of the heart, the mouth speaks. Out of the overflow of the heart,
Yeah.
the mouth speaks. That's a verse in the Bible that they said, take that verse and then just write a story.
Yeah,
So-
hopefully we could all do a lot more of
So
that.
it came from my heart, and I just shared the story about the butterfly, how it comforted us.
Right.
So
Okay. So you end up writing the book, and it's been out and I don't want to give away the book, right? Because obviously we want people to read it. I haven't read it. I'm going to read it because this happened pretty quickly. This is all new. I think everything's happening very quickly right now. It's actually, I was telling you when you first came in, this has probably been the most authentic my life has ever been, and the most rewarding every day. My wife mentioned it the other day. She goes, "You seem to be so at peace all of a sudden." And I said, "Everything's real." Right? You're not just trying to achieve something or chase something or do something. Like, this is the realest it's ever been, and it's the most empowering. And stories like yours, even just knowing that you had a daughter that you lost, and it's been this long, and you're getting through. I am amazed at how strong you are. Right? That's power. That's a lot of power, and you continue to exude that. I'm sure. And inside of this book, the book is called A Mother's Story of Survival, Rescue, and Hope in the Darkness of Teen Suicide.
SOS.
SOS.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Bri, I'll do this. I'm sure you have it on Amazon and every other platform.
Yes.
How do people get it?
they
All
can
right.
get it from my website, which is sherryjcullison.com.
Right.
Or Amazon, Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is this book specifically is your journey and how to heal past something of this nature, and how
Right.
you did it, which could help others as well. And I think I asked you when the show first started, how many people have you run into that are in need of this? Are there groups? How does that world of support look like for somebody who's lost somebody?
Well, I have had grief groups contact me, individuals. I've had a few people that have contacted me, bought a book, said they couldn't put it down. Some people read it in one day, and which is a compliment, But
Yes.
it's not so much the writing; it's the story that was created. So, my faith, our faith, is strongly mentioned in the book, and basically because faith in God isn't necessarily. A lot of people think that's a negative they don't want. They don't want something or someone telling them what to do, but basically all it is God wanting to love them,
Right.
But it's more of a positive because prayer is positive. It helps physically, it helps mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and just reading and learning and growing. So I think that has been quite just a cornerstone in my life and my grief walk.
How did finishing it settle your mind? So when I look at life and addictions and some of the trials and tribulations that I watch people go through or I've been through myself, I know that typically when you finish something, the achievement, the process by creating that, and the end result sometimes closes a chapter. I've just recently closed a chapter on my life and starting a new one, and letting go of some of that guilt that I grew up with and carried with for a long time. And you talked about guilt over this, right? I'm sure those were heavy emotions when you started. Did this help finishing this?
Yes, definitely. At first, you as a writer, you think, okay, here's an empty computer screen. Where do I start? You think of it as a mountain you have to climb, right?
Yeah.
So, but once I started and I just got going, it just kind of flowed out of me, all of the different stories, the different things that happened, the good that came of it, how other people helped us, different stages of grief that we went through. We had to go through a period of forgiveness. And Ray can
Yeah.
share on that too, about forgiving Sarah for what she did. So, but during the writing process, I was actually pleasantly surprised because I would go in my office and sit at my computer and start writing, and I would write and write and write. It just flowed out of me. And then other times I would go back and reread it, and I think, I don't even remember writing that.
Oh, wow.
It just, did I write that? You know, so it was quite the experience. And, you know, there were times of tears. There were times of just reoccurring things that it kind of stirred up, you know, these dead ashes in the floor of my heart, so to speak. Just kind of stirred them back up. But you know what became of it is my heart became more whole the more I wrote. And by the time I finished and reread, I'm like, wow, that's just, it was such a healing process for me.
And her finishing was not the same for me. And the
Okay.
reason being was, for 20 years, it was laid to rest. I
Right.
did go revisit some of the
Right.
some of the things that are in the book, and so she had to I couldn't read it. She read it to me, and she only read 2 chapters at a time. I started getting like this. I had to
Right.
I had to leave the room
Right.
because it dug up stuff I hadn't thought about in a while. You
Right.
know? And she mentioned the forgiveness. I don't know if you. I was taught a long time ago as a child, if you take a Bible and you open it up, just let it fall open with your eyes closed, and put your finger down and then read that verse.
Yeah.
And whatever's going on in your life right then, that verse will speak to you.
Right.
You know, the Bible just wasn't written for back 2,000 years ago. It was written because it's still pliable today in every situation in your life. So I'm in church the first week after Sarah died, and I'm struggling. I'm just hurting, and I
Right.
just open up, let the Bible fall open. I put my finger down. 2 Corinthians come up, and it says, "If anybody's caused you grief, forgive them. For if you forgive them, I will forgive them in Christ's name."
Right.
I never thought about it, but I had to forgive Sarah for what she'd done to cause me grief,
Yeah.
and I did, and you wouldn't believe the amount of
Pressure.
anxiety and pressure that was
It was
on me
relieved.
lift. You know,
Kind of like you still hold it today and you can feel it and see it. Now it's more love than grief, I'm assuming, because
Mhm.
once you let things go, that joy that you're feeling and those tears and that welling up, and I have them right now just because you're emotional, so now I am. So it becomes a different type of tear. It becomes a little more joyful when you let the grief go or the forgiveness, right? And a lot of the youth that I've worked with, something traumatic's happened in all of their lives, and it's getting back to that traumatic instance and figuring out what is and letting it go and forgiving. And you're 1,000% right. Is the moment you choose to forgive and just let it go and let that person. I say to myself every day when someone mistreats me, I say, well, at least I don't have to live in that mind. And I walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That is not my story. It's not my life. At least I don't have to be there. That is a powerful, powerful tool for the youth, for adults, for children. And I don't think we learn that until a much later age.
yeah.
Where,
The thing that makes me grieful still to this day, that I grieve, and
Yeah.
it's not happy tears, it's sad tears.
Yeah.
Is, for instance, on her graduation, on Sarah's graduation, she was a freshman when she died.
yeah.
We were invited to come receive her diploma
Mm.
at the high school.
Yeah, that'd be a rough day.
And so we went to get her diploma, and there was other families there that lost a loved one, and they got the diploma. But when Sherry and I went up to get Sarah's diploma, about three-quarters of the student body stood up and applauded us.
Yeah.
And I grieve because the other families didn't just get what we got. We got
Right.
a standing ovation from the student body. They just got a diploma and had to sit back down. And I felt bad for them that they didn't get what we got.
You, you make a good point. Is that, yeah, you make a good point. I'm gonna have to think about that one. Wow.
Yeah. And it's because there's certain things that happened when Sarah died that affected.
Mm-hmm.
She was very popular in
Right.
school. And so like Sherry mentioned earlier, there's a song that was written by, at the time, and he's still, in my opinion, a Christian songwriter, but he wrote a song about Sarah. And he did it because 2 weeks prior, she was doing a concert, and she wanted to come up and talk to him. And he knew that she was already saved, but these other kids over here, he didn't know that they were.
Right.
And he told Sarah, you know, because he's friend of the family, he says, I'll get with you. And 2 weeks later, she's dead. And he thought maybe if he would have talked to her, maybe she wouldn't be dead.
Right.
So he wrote the song about her, and I hurt for him because he feels guilty
Right.
for what she did.
That's some pretty deep stuff, Ray. It's I mean, you're sitting here today, and it is what it is, right? It is what
Right.
it is. But like you said, the power and the stories and the lives that have been changed that come out of it, the differences, and it's something that you ask yourself as a parent, if that happened to me, how would I deal with it? You ask yourself that. If you're, I think that if you're a parent that's conscious and you're thinking, what am I doing today? Am I driving safe? Have I got my seatbelt on? Am I, what happens? And I think the wife put it the best. And this was the moment my life changed. She says, Chad, your actions affect all of our lives.
That's right.
And I
Very
went,
true.
what are you talking about? I'm a very selfish individual. I'll do what I want, when I want, how I want, and I'll end up at night out in Vegas till 5 a.m. and get out of my way. And something happened in our lives that was pretty traumatic, and my actions were the cause of it. And I thought, that was the moment I went, wow, that's real, right? So I can understand when you say that everybody has an attachment to that. That's a very real thing. And so you still practice today to get rid of that guilt and that grief a bit. You have a lot, but there's still some there, isn't there?
Yeah,
It always carries.
there's sometimes just circumstances arise, whether, we go to a wedding or a funeral, and then, just those emotions kind of
Yeah.
come up. But over the years, they settle, I think, and a lot of it is the mindset, the faith. And so I think that, if we just encourage people to take one step at a time. Sometimes, the survivors of suicide often take on the same emotions as the victim. In other words, we went through depression, we went through darkness, we went through just feeling like there's no hope left. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, was just to bring hope to others.
There used to be a website called 1000deaths.com.
Right.
And what that meant was they died once. We died 1,000 times
Right.
trying to figure out why they had to die.
Yeah, in my world, I've lost some people close to me, actually, so I guess I experienced suicide as well, from a mentor of mine, believe it or not, someone who's very inspirational in my life at the time that I needed him as well. It's the most selfish thing you can do. It is the most selfish because it hurts so many other people. So I had somebody in my life that mentored me, and it was right before I went away to prison, actually. And he was a poker coach. He taught me to play poker, and he worked with me on a lot of different things. I was going through a very traumatic time in my life, and I really needed some sort of guidance. Now, teaching me poker, people might think it's not really good, but it was. There's a lot of lessons to be learned in poker and those pieces. And he took his life as well. by suicide. And in a home, I wasn't there, but it happened. And I guess in dealing with it, I realized that suicide is a selfish thing. I can't even say the word. It's the most selfish thing you can do, right? But then I had to forgive him and go, you were hurting. You did what you wanted to do, and who am I to take that away from you? It's free will. You get to choose what you want. So that was when I was able to help let that guilt go. As I went, you chose. Had you chose to stay here, we could have hung out more, but you chose differently. So you keep that. That's yours. And that one took a while to work on, but that was helpful.
Yeah, that's a great thing you did. I know that for many years I struggled way too much of what other people thought.
Right.
So I felt everybody thinks I was a horrible mother because my daughter decided to take her life.
Yeah.
So that's the way I looked at it.
Right. And anybody would understand that. Anybody who's human would understand that that's the way you'd feel. And I'm nobody, but I can tell you right now, it wasn't your fault. It was what it was going to be. And if you believe in what you believe in, then it was what it was.
Right.
And now you get to change, many lives in this journey and path of yours. And if we don't put it in a box and determine whose or what it was, and it just was, I think about the amount of people that die on the planet every day. Right? That's how I try and wrap that around my head. And I say,
Right.
people pass away. This happens. How lucky are we to be able to be here together right now? How lucky are we?
Right.
That's how serious I take it. Right? I'm just lucky to be here today, which is how it's gone. I'm going to take a quick break real quick, and I want to get into the final piece of this and talk about this a little bit more.
Okay.
You guys are strong. Brian, cut it down for a second. All right, took a quick break there for a second so I could collect myself. Ray had me all emotional. And if you didn't notice, I wore my nostalgic mentor shirt today. You sent me a picture of you up in the hills, in the woods somewhere on a razor, and you were wearing a black hoodie.
Oh, my black hoodie mentor hoodie that you gave me.
Almost a decade ago.
Yes, sir.
One of the first designs that I'd come up with. It was Mentor Lifestyle then, now it's the Mentor Empire. And I can't remember why I changed it exactly. There's a story behind it somewhere. But nonetheless, so you wear your hoodie. Tell me, I want to get into the last little segment was a little emotional. Now I want to get into the joyous stuff. I want to get into the happy stuff that kind of takes us out and into the future and how you deal today and how this book is inspirational to others and how I can use it. I have some ideas. When you wear your mentor hoodie, what does it feel like? What does it say to you? Why do you wear it?
When I first started wearing it, I didn't think much of anything, to be truthful. I just thought, it's okay. And I knew what you were trying to accomplish at the time, right?
Right.
But then later, even before I really knew your success and how you were growing, because somebody asked me one time, what is that?
I don't know.
No, I actually said, I'm here to mentor other men.
Oh.
Because I knew you were trying to mentor other people,
Yep.
mostly youth, I do believe.
Yep.
And so, and then all of a sudden it was kind of like a proud thing to wear. I mean, it meant a lot to me. It still does.
That's awesome. So
You owe me a new shirt.
I want to we'll get you another one. So, when you wear this clothing, I created the clothing for the purpose of spreading a message, if you will. I just wanted people to mentor more. It was so helpful in my life that I figured if more people would mentor, it'd be helpful in other people's lives. So the real purpose was to create it to get more people to pay attention and mentor more. That was the purpose. To this day, people still don't know what it means. They say, well, what's this mentor thing? And I say, I don't know. It's just a message, right? It's just a message. So I think that's funny that you say that. Is when you first got it, you had no idea what it meant. Most people today still don't get it. And maybe they never do, or maybe I never really do. But what I know is it changes conversations I have with people. It feels good. It makes me want to be a better person, right? I try and be the best version of myself. I remember it helped me quit drinking and driving. I'd have drinks and drive. And one day I was walking out of the bar with my Mentor shirt on, and I was lit up pretty good, and I thought, I'm wearing my Mentor clothes today. I can't drive. What if I get pulled over? I'm working with the police officers in Henderson now. What if I get pulled over and I got my Mentor shirt on? I'm having a drink. And so I walked home. And that was the moment I knew how powerful it was. It's just a message. It just tells you something. And mentoring and the word mentor is such a positive, mostly a positive affirmation for most people, because you don't typically have a negative experience associated with somebody mentoring in your past. You may, but for the most part you don't. When you think of someone who's helped you or guide you in any way, shape, or form, it's typically a positive. So that's why I did it, and why it's here and what it becomes, I have no clue. I didn't know it was going to be a podcast show, but I didn't know how beneficial this would be for people as well either. So sorry for the little rant, but
No, it's the same thing as like the guy that wrote the song, Sarah's song. His name's Chris.
yeah,
Chris wrote a song that said, "Are you the same person on Tuesday that you are on Sunday in church?"
right,
And it's the same message when you're wearing something, or if you're in church, you're depicting something.
right,
And when people see you outside of that atmosphere at church, and they see you sitting over at a bar or whatever, it's like back in the day, Sherry, was going to church more than I was. I wanted to still go out and have a drink and dance and party, and she said no, because she was a worship leader. And I
Right.
go, just have a soda. She goes, they don't know what I'm drinking.
right.
Oh,
Good point.
That's a good example.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that,
Yeah.
and so it is when you wear something, you're depicting something,
Yeah.
and you want to be true to it.
And my hope is that it goes across the world and it's not pigeonholed in any one segment, because the word is so broad, is that it can travel from country to country, from religion to religion, from race to race. It doesn't matter, which you see the human brand as well, right? That kind of worked into it. That's the hope, is that can we put this positive affirmation on our body and then just treat each other differently? So that really is the hope. So let's talk about what happened. So you called me, we talked, we agreed to come on the show and talk about this book, and I want to make sure that everybody knows about it and gets it, and I'll put it up, a picture on it and that. But do you know what happened within 12 hours when you whoa 12 hours after you called me, the school called me and said, will you come speak at the fun run, which is suicide prevention awareness?
Really? Wow.
About 12 hours. And I didn't connect it, and I was sitting at dinner with my daughter, and she says, Dad, why don't you have that lady on, Ray's wife, that called you yesterday? Why don't you bring her to the school with you? And I went, how does that work like that? So there's a little bit of your...
A human connection.
There's a little bit of...
So if that's an
of your
invite, she
Sarah,
might be able to do
yeah,
that.
there's a little bit of your Sarah working in some strange ways, right? Like
That's right.
that was so real for me that happened that way. I mean, within 12 hours of us talking, and then said, "Will you guys speak at?"
And then your daughter
And
says that.
I went, whoa! And then my daughter said that, and I was like, how does the world connect like that? So I guess what it is when you put things out into the world authentically, it comes back strong. When you put things out into the world with your armor on, it comes back strong as other armor, right? So when you're putting out Mr. Tough Guy, you're getting all the tough guys back. When you're putting out emotional guy, you're gonna get the emotional guys back. You put out love, you get love back. I think that really has to be it, because that's the way it works. So I'm gonna be at the school. I'm gonna talk to them and see what I can do and see. This is for dealing with, and what I'm speaking on, I think, is preventing, right? Is trying to prevent and how we treat each other and how the kids treat people. So this plays a part or a role in it, and let me see how it fits in. But I thought that was unique, and you need to hear
The
that.
kids
Okay,
are
great.
brutal.
Oh, the
Yeah, what the kids
13-year-old
go through.
girls and 14-year-old girls and are the meanest. I have a 14-year-old daughter. Are like the meanest animals on the planet. right? I have never seen people so vicious to each other than young girls. Boys are mean; they hit and punch each other, and right. But the girls, they can get mean. I have a couple. I watch it.
Well, the
They,
story,
they sock it out with emotions,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do. Yeah.
The back end story to Sarah's passing was, it was over a boy. They were on again, off again, and anyways, he is close friends with us to this day. Again, God gave me wisdom, and I'm just going to tell that back end story real quick. Was right after Sarah died, a lot of her friends wanted to come be with us to comfort us, and he wanted to come, and his mother didn't want him to come because she was afraid of
How we'd
what
react.
we would do, react to him, knowing that
Yeah.
it was over him.
Right.
So he got there, and he was very emotional, and I told him, I says, this ain't your fault.
Right.
This is not your fault. And I comforted him, and then he went back with the rest of the kids, and his mother looked at him and said, how can you do that? How can you not be mad at him? I go, what kind of a man would I be to take out my frustrations or sadness on him so I would feel better?
Right.
I
And then
saw
what does that do to his life?
That's
Right.
exactly.
When somebody he looks up to, right, looks down.
But
Yeah.
but what happened after that was the bullying from the kids was horrendous. The kids said, well, who would want to go out with you now? Or you're just a girlfriend killer, and just on and on. And he
Oh,
was getting beat up
wow.
at school
Yeah.
all the
Horrible.
time. And he would call me, and I finally told him one day, I said, look, I said, if you want, I'll call the principal, because I know everybody, right? I said,
Yeah.
I'll get into the school, and we'll have an assembly, and I'll talk to him. He said, let me play it out a little bit. And
Right.
so it finally let up. But the kids were saying stuff like, I raped my daughter and killed her, or I raped my daughter and she committed suicide because
Right.
of what I did.
Right.
And then there was, me and her killed her for financial gains.
Right.
Just the stories that went around.
Everything
were,
that goes through every loss or unexpected loss, where everybody,
yeah,
throws everything out
it was
there.
it was just,
What does that do to you mentally? Mentally, you have to overcome those, because you can't unhear anything.
Right.
That is a challenge in the world we live today.
but at the end of the day, I know the truth in my head.
Of course. Yeah, that's probably one of the most powerful things is when you know the truth, you don't have to be emotional or reactionary to anything.
Yeah.
Uh,
What's the
but-
saying? Talk is cheap.
yeah, talk is cheap. And the loudest one in the room is the most insecure. I think that was the first 40 years of my life. For sure. So the book is out. How long has the book been out?
It's been out since October of 2021.
21. All right, so 21, 22, 23. So the book's been out for a couple of years. Do you keep copies at home in Kingman, or are they all online?
Oh, no, we keep copies at home.
You keep copies at home? All
So
right,
if
let me get
anyone
some
wants to
information.
contact me
Yeah.
on my website, then I
Got
can
it.
send them.
Is there any other services or things that, I mean, you wrote the book, and I'm sure it's positive. What else do you do now to keep yourself busy?
Well, I'm a caregiver for my mother. My mother moved in with us a year ago last November. So she's requires full care.
Okay.
So thankfully I have family that stays with her while we come to events like this. So so that's my full-time job, is I caregive for my mom.
Which was
Okay.
kind of, it's a blessing that we're able to do that for her, but it's also kind of rough because she came to live with us right when the book was being released.
Right.
So everything we had planned to get out and really go promote the book, we got a fifth wheel. We were just going to go out and just take off. And I keep hitting this mic.
That's all right.
And,
It's part of the show.
Just take off and promote the book and try to help people. Is all went from here's our thoughts to, okay, this is what's really happening right now. So, God's going to get in the hands the book that
Yeah.
those that need it.
And I think it's the undertone of society, whether it's recovery from addiction or recovery from death or loss or anything like that. We innately, as a species, once we feel that pain and suffering, if you have a heart and it's beating, typically your return reaction is to go out and help others try not to experience that pain and suffering. I feel like that's probably one of those beautiful things I'm watching happen. Especially you can see it online if you get your algorithms right and you're flowing through. I have to spend a lot of time on social media, and I do a lot of marketing, and I have to limit it, but there's a lot of beauty out there if you let it in. There's a lot of negative if you let it in. You really have to choose what you want. The good part is you can.
Right.
You can choose what you let in and what you don't let in. So you say you spend time doing positive and helping others, so you're taking care of a family member, which is amazing. I think we should, I say that now, I think we should all do that. Yes, my mother-in-law, my mom, I'm sure I'm taking care of everybody when that time comes. Remember back when there was tribes, or, I talked to my dad and my grandma, they're from the Oto tribe, and I think it's Nebraska or Omaha, but you used to take care of your family all the way to the end. You didn't send them off to a living care facility or something like that, and that's always perplexed me to this day, is should we be bringing people and our family and being with our family to the end, because family is the purpose of life. Human connection is the purpose of life. We can talk about it till we're blue. Like at the end of the day, if we don't have the human connection, it's just lonely and not okay for me. Opinion. What do you do now to keep you busy on a daily basis, Ray?
Well, I'm involved in several. I still like to golf, although I haven't golfed as much as I'd like to. But I belong to a group called Men at Heart,
Right.
and we put together trips that if you ever heard of a men's retreat, where you actually go to a camp or something,
Yep.
we do it a little differently. Men at Heart is like a men's retreat on steroids. And what we do is
Sweet.
we go out and all my leaders and a lot of those that go have trailers, fifth wheels, side-by-sides, motorcycles, quads, whatever. And we go out in the middle of nowhere. So we're going to be having a trip this coming April, and we're going to be outside of Williams camping.
Right.
And the plans we have for these guys, some of the rides we're going to go on are absolutely phenomenal.
Right.
So like we're going to take them to a place called Sycamore Canyon, and Sycamore Canyon is I think the second biggest canyon behind the Grand Canyon in the state of Arizona. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Okay.
But we have we're able to go out there, and we give our speakers speak on relationship with God.
Yeah.
And we usually set a topic. This topic is identity through surrender. So all the
Okay.
leaders are going to be talking about something, but we go out and we have a good time. We just have a great time, and we don't need any drugs, we don't need any alcohol to have this good time.
Right.
We still have a great time without any substance
Yeah.
to try to help us have a good time.
Got it. Yeah, there's some balance in that. I have my best friend quit drinking. We drank our whole lives, and he quit drinking. I quit drinking for a year just to see. Actually, the year I was in Kingman was the year that I quit drinking. That's when I met you. That's funny. I quit drinking for a year. I said, I'm going to try this. I'm going to see if my life turns out differently. I drank since high school, and I quit drinking that year that I was down in Kingman and driving back and forth. I think I got diabetes that year, though, because I quit drinking, I quit smoking, and so to satisfy, I grabbed a box of Nerds, and every day I would drive from Vegas, I'd drive back and forth, I'd just have a box of Nerds, and I was just eating Nerds for like 3 or 4 months. The sugar levels were through the roof. But that was that time. So, and then I go back and forth, and I have a drink, don't have a drink, but some people choose to go all the way without it. Some choose not. I definitely see there's a balance out there in life of people that can or cannot. But as time goes on and you get older, it just becomes something that you don't necessarily need anymore. It's more of those getaway moments, right? If I want a little reprieve for something and I don't know how to do yoga, or I don't know how to meditate, or I don't read a book or something, sometimes just having a beer is the quick and easily simple fix to the immediate dopamine rush, right? Just have a beer and like, oh, okay, I feel better for a second. But you got to know how to manage that stuff, otherwise it can get to you, that's for sure.
Yeah, I quit
So-
drinking beer when I first met you. I drank beer,
Yep, I
and I
remember.
quit drinking beer altogether in August of 2019.
Yeah.
I went from a 12-pack to a case of beer a day
Yeah.
to zero. I wound up in the hospital with pancreatitis,
Ooh, yeah.
and the doctor said, quit drinking.
Yeah.
Bam,
Done.
Done.
Gave you a reason.
Yeah.
Man changes when he knows. So
Yeah.
that's for sure. So so other than these retreats, is there anything else you do to keep you busy on a daily basis?
I do audio visual stuff.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of times I get a phone call, somebody's loved one passed, and I put together the slideshows.
Perfect.
I'm a photographer, so it's a hobby that I'm really learning and enjoying. I'm a web designer, so I've built some web pages and maintain web pages for some people. I try to stay busy now I'm retired,
Yeah.
because if I don't do something, it'll drive her completely batty. Because
You
I
better
desire a
believe it.
lot of attention even when I'm
Yeah.
at home and on
Yeah.
the computer. She's my best friend, and like I said, she's it. She's my everything.
That's awesome. So do you speak with families? Like if somebody was to have or end up in a situation and needed someone to talk to you, do you offer those kind of
Oh, of
services?
course,
Oh, yeah.
You
of
do?
course, yeah.
Okay.
Anyone could call me.
All right.
Yeah.
Great.
Sure.
Perfect.
Contact me through the website.
So, awesome to get back in touch with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so very, very, very much. Thank you for sharing this with me.
Thank you for having us.
I'm not as good of a reader as my wife is, so I'll have her read it in one day, and then she can give me I'm just kidding. I'll read it. I'm not as fast. She can read a book in like a day. I don't know how she does that. But I'm going to take a read into this because I'm very interested in the story. Very proud of you for actually writing it. Putting in the work is something that people have a challenge doing all the time. Is there anything that you'd like to leave everybody with as far as what it comes to with the loss of a child, or what would be helpful? Just anything you'd like to leave with people and let them know?
Yeah, I just like to say that it's okay to not be okay, and that we all go through struggles, even pertaining to the book. It's not completely centered around suicide itself. There's a lot of different situations in life that each of us go through, whether it's just a loss of a loved one, loss of a job, a relationship, whatever it may be. I think the book will encourage everyone. And just my hope is that the world finds hope. What we've been through, I just can't fathom that people go through this every single day. There are 130 suicides in the U.S. every day. That's one about every 10 minutes.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's just, and I just want to encourage people that no matter what you're going through, there's always hope for tomorrow. Just
Right.
take one step at a time. You'll make it through.
And that's where I think that's where people lose it is with Sarah. She had her dreams, right? Her hopes, her dreams. And little by little, she wanted to go. She was very talented musically, just like her mother.
Mhm.
And she wanted to go to Juilliard's. Juilliard's cost a lot of money.
Right.
And I told her, I says, you got to get your grades up. You got to get some scholarships because old Dad can't do
Right.
all that. What I did was I was stealing part of her dream. And then she was 14 and she couldn't wait to be 16 so she got her driver's license. And the state of Arizona was saying, yeah, we're going to make it 18. That's what they were talking about. You weren't going to be able to get your permit till you were 17 and a half. And guess what happened? Part of her dream was stolen. So, and her boyfriend, part of her dream. And all of a sudden, when you have all these little pieces of dreams start going away, why am I here?
Right.
But here's the most important thing I could say. Whatever your dreams you have now may not be your dreams in the future. And if you wait long enough, all your dreams do come true. You just got to hang in there. Times get tough, but you know what? At the end of the day,
There's a lot to be thankful for.
there's a lot to be thankful for. Times were tough for me and her when all this happened, but you know what? We held on, and
We
they
can smile today.
weren't easy. We come on now and we could say and make it look like it was easy,
Yeah.
but there was tough times, real tough times. So it's just important that you just don't give up to what Satan wants to do. And I'm a
Talk
firm
to somebody.
believer in God and the devil, and Satan is here to conquer and divide and to tear us down, and he'll do whatever he can to succeed at that. And there's no reason to follow his lead. None.
Awesome. I appreciate you both. Look forward to chatting more after this is over.
We will.
All right, Brian. Episodes, Human Connection 6, not episode. Done.